In today's video, I'm going to be covering the whole entire market in terms of Dow Jones, Nasdaq, and S&P 500, including the economic calendar. Now, I do post these videos daily, so I highly encourage you to double check my latest videos on X and YouTube, so that way you have the most up-to-date information. And before I get into the technical analysis portion, I'm going to go over the economic calendar. And for Friday, July 19th, 2024, we have pretty much a light day. 10:40 a.m. we have New York Fed President Williams speak, and at 1 p.m. we have Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic speak. One thing to note, though, the market's narrative could change at the end of next week, which we have PCE inflation numbers, which the Fed highly encourages these numbers to be more accurate versus the CPI and PPI inflation numbers. But yeah, that's next week on Friday. So be on the lookout for that. And I do post these videos daily, so I'll keep you guys updated. Now, in terms of the analysis portion, for the Dow Jones and S&P, they are showing potentially further downside, potentially. But the shocking part is we have the Nasdaq. Yesterday was showing further downside, but it seems like it could be potentially reversing back up to the upside potentially, but it seems like a false upside. Like it seems like it's going to be potentially a bull trap potentially, but it could be legitimate because we do have Tesla's earnings next week. So if Tesla carries the market, then that could happen. Plus Nvidia looks like it's in a zone to bounce up. So I'll just show you for the Nvidia portion. If you go to a 3-month chart, actually I'll show you the 5-month chart first. So in terms of upward trend resistance line, it's like right about here, dating back since 2017. False breakouts here and there, got knocked down in 2021 and then in 2024 as well. So March of 2024 and November of 2021, and then we broke through it right as of May of 2024, and then potentially came down to it. And this is the line, by the way, and potentially bouncing off it potentially. So maybe reversal, but the indications in terms of the longer term a little bit is somewhat of a pull down potentially, but at the same time, Nvidia is a mega cap stock. It's destroying quarters after quarters. The reason for the recent pull down is because the Biden administration are potentially increasing additional tariffs from 25% to 50% by 2025 for chip semiconductors, technology and all that stuff being sold to them. So that's the reason why for the pull down. It's nothing to do with the performance of the company from what I've seen, but I don't look at this stock too much, though, I will say. There's that. Now, in terms of the actual breakdowns, I'm going to go over the S&P 500 first, looking at SPY, which is an ETF for the S&P 500. So just same thing, just different ratio, and close at $552.66. Now, there's a chance it could be bouncing, but again, like I stated earlier, the indications is showing further downside. The only one that's showing a potential reversal and potentially not coming down, but kind of looks like a bull trap, is Nasdaq. So, but I'm going to go over that later on. So we're within this zone. The thing is, though, given the indications, plus this zone is not really a great support line, but we saw a bounce on it. Let me just zoom in and move this on the side here. It looks like it could potentially go up. Potentially. Now, if we go up, we're going to have issues passing, and I'm going to cover the downside, by the way, too. We're going to have issues passing this moving average zone, which it has acted as a support level too, by the way, which I'm going to show soon, but about $555 and some change. Mind you, again, we closed at $552 and some change. And like you see right about here, multiple times bounced off support around that 555 and some change, and support, and then in the false breakout right here. Now, to the upside, additionally, you can have resistance at the 556 and some change. You can see a bunch of consolidation resistance right about there, support a little bit right there. And then the next zone, I'm thinking maybe potentially, this is just my opinion, but about 559 and some change, which coincides with the clean number of 560 anyway. And you can see the moving averages hitting at the 559 and some change as well. So the 559 and some change and 560 is going to be quite difficult. If we pass that, then we go to the higher zones. I just don't think, given the direction of the S&P, the MACD line, what it's showing, and then there's nothing really to change the market to the upside fully. I don't think we're going to go higher, but if we do go higher, you're looking within the zone of 561 and some change to 562 and some change, and then getting to the zones of the higher all-time highs area, 563 and some change. So just horizontally right about here, give or take. Not really a perfect line, but you can kind of see it, hopefully, about 563 and some change, and then getting to the all-time highs of 564, essentially 565, because I think it hit 565 and 10 cents, something like that. In terms of resistance. Now to the downside, this is where I think potentially it could be heading down personally. So there's actually two zones they could be heading down to. So the first support level that could act as support is the 548 and some change. I personally don't think it'll hold. I think most likely it'll be within this zone. So within this zone, we saw multiple support touch points, and then multiple somewhat resistance, yeah, false breakouts, but that's within $542 and some change. If the markets keep coming down, I think that could potentially hold us. Otherwise, we're heading down to this zone, which, yeah, there will be more support levels on the way down, but about $531 and some change. But I don't think that will be seen the next trading day. I think it will take some time. Now for Nasdaq, I'm going to be looking at QQQ, which is an ETF for Nasdaq. So same thing, just different ratio, just like the S&P. And one thing I want to show is the upward trend resistance line, which the S&P has as well, by the way. What I'm about to show is dating back since 2010. It's a channel, upward trend resistance line and upward trend support level channel, dating back since 2010. So constantly getting knocked down. And in 2020 to 2022, broke through and then came back underneath and then got knocked down. This was in the time frame of, this year. So February, March of 2024 within the zone. But then as of recently, we did break through it. And this was, I think inflation numbers came out during this time. It was about mid-June of 2024, breakthrough, and then now potentially we could be bouncing off it. Now the indications are showing a potential bounce to the upside, and the indications I'm looking at is MACD lines. So it's just to visually show, this is an MACD line, indicates if it's a bearish or bullish movement, and currently right now it looks like it has crossed over to a bullish movement, potentially a bounce. We see volume increase in terms of the buys. I don't know if you could really see it fully, but this uptick of green is increased volume of buys. Let me try to separate it a little bit. So you could see we had a bunch of selling and then a massive uptick of buying. So does it mean anything? Not necessarily, right? Again, it's because the mega cap stocks are predominantly tech, the tech stocks, and Nvidia or Nasdaq is more of the tech sector. If the tech stocks end up moving down, then it doesn't matter. These MACD lines are not guaranteed, right? There's just more of a direction that the market is moving at. But we'll see. Now, if we do head up to the upside, I think what will happen, I'm gonna show the false narrative viewpoint that, in my opinion, could happen, and then the pull down, and then the levels further down as well overall, if that makes sense. So resistance and support levels. So if we were to go up, we could be stopped at the 481 and some change. Right now we're at 479 and some change, but I don't think that's going to necessarily cause us an issue. I think more of this zone right about here for 486 and some change. So the way I'm looking at that is resistance point, resistance. I think there was like somewhat of a small support level kind of thing, but you can still see resistance too as well. And then it doesn't necessarily hit this point right about here, but it's still about 486 and some change anyway, regardless. And this was in the pre-market of today's trading day. So I think 486 and some change will cause us issue to pass it. And then if it goes that high, so maybe tomorrow could be an up day, right? Which is again Friday, July 19th, 2024. And people might think the market has reversed potentially, and it could possibly be the case, right? Somehow the market shakes off the increased tariff and all that stuff. But ultimately, it could be coming down to this upward trend resistance line that dates back since November of 2023. Let me see if I can zoom out just a little bit. So since November 20, it was more prevalent in November of 2023. We got resistance, support. Let me see, there was a couple more resistance and support level price points. Oh yeah, resistance right about there, small tick right there. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a resistance tick right there, resistance tick right there, and then a cluster of resistance price points right about here. So there's one tick right there, but not necessarily like a consolidation resistance upward trend kind of movement. So this line does hold true. So in my opinion, we would go to 486 and some change, which coincides with the moving average, by the way, for the 6-month chart, and then potentially come down potentially on the Monday or even the same trading day, right? And if we do come down on the same trading day, I don't think we're going to break this 2010 upward trend resistance line. So we're looking at support about the 476 and some change. But if it happens to the next trading day, which would be the Monday, by the way, then I think we would see 473 and some change, potentially bouncing off this upward trend resistance / support level, which would act as support level at that time. But that's just my opinion. Again, this is all just my opinion, so please do your own due diligence and research before buying and selling. Now, if you think it's just going to go to the upside regardless, because the indications in terms of like 1 month, 3 months, 6 months is showing upside, but then the 1 year shows downside and 5 year shows downside. But if you think if you're optimistic the market's going to go up and all stuff, which could happen, obviously, right? Because again, it could carry up with Tesla earnings coming up next week, anticipation for that. Tesla goes up, markets go up, so on and so forth. Plus inflation numbers come out by end of the week too. So the market could be anticipating good inflation numbers and so on and so forth. So the movement could go up, and then the S&P could be carried up too as well. So anything's possible. But if you think that's going to be the case, then the next level of resistance past the 486 and some change resistance that I mentioned, you're looking at resistance about 490 and some change. And then the next zone could be about 492 and some change because due to the moving averages. And then the next zone after that is about 496 and some change. And then you're looking at 499, 500. And then the pretty much consolidation of 502 and some change. And then the previous, not previous all-time high, but it was during the pre-market, 505 and some change. I believe this was 503 and some change. Yeah, 503 and some change, but somewhere between 502, 503 and some change. But that's for Nasdaq/QQQ specifically. And then if we're looking at Dow Jones, by the way, another thing to mention too is the volatility index has been rising. So I think more of a reason potentially the markets could be pulled down a little bit, but it's not guaranteed, not necessarily, right? Now, in terms of Dow Jones, it's surprising showing a pullback. Is this pullback going to be strong enough to potentially get broken down past this 2021 upward trend resistance line? So this dates back since 2021. We got 1, 2, 3, 4 touch points, and this breaks down to 2 and 2 touch points I'm going to show soon. And we have an upward trend support level, but that's not really in play right now anyway. And if you zoom into a 3-month chart, you'll see the 1, 2, 3, 4 touch points that I was mentioning earlier. And actually, technically, you almost count this as a touch point, even though it's not necessarily clean. But you can see there was resistance passing it, and then it's just a massive spike up once we passed it. But yeah, indications are kind of showing to the downside. And the moving average kind of collides with the upward trend resistance level that could act as support on the way down. And if you're wondering what that price point is, it is about 40,332 points, give or take. Currently, we're at 40,665 points. If we were to go to the upside, we will meet resistance pretty much from the past all-time high, which is about 41,354 points, give or take, depending on what actually hit. And then, I don't know, in my opinion, this could potentially cause a resistance, but I don't think so. But it actually kind of coincides with 41,000 anyway. So 40,950 points, give or take. But I think the 41,000 will cause resistance, obviously, because it's a clean number. But I'm not really concerned on the upside, just because we didn't see much price actions fully. More of the downside, because indication is kind of showing to the downside. Again, it could go up. It's not like it's impossible or anything. It's just I'm just going off the MAC lines, based off the indications what it could potentially shows. So again, MAC line, this is a 3-month chart showing downside. Obviously, this is more shorter term, but we'll see. But the downside, it is possible to bounce off because indications previously were strong, and the 1 year and 5 year are still strong to the upside somewhat. So 1 year, it kind of did tick down to the light green, but I think the 5 year is still strong either way. Is upward trends is showing the bullish movement in terms of the 1 year, and the 5 year, it, like yesterday I covered, it just crossed over to the bullish anyway, as of yesterday though, either yesterday or 2 days ago. But yeah, so it's still showing upside. So even though the short-term indications are showing downside, I think we're potentially going to bounce at some of these levels that are closer to this upward trend resistance line and then just keep going up. We'll see. So yeah, you're looking at support about the 40,300 something points, give or take. And then if that does break, then the next support level potentially could be at the 40,050 points, essentially 40,000 clean. And then based off the moving average, which coincidentally is around pretty much the same zone right about here. So not necessarily the cleanest, but you can see resistance, nothing really here, I guess. Maybe potentially support if I clean the line right about here, but you can see support right there. Crossing over the moving average, about 39,805 points. Again, my line's not perfect, so not exactly that, but essentially looking at 39,800 points. And then the next moving average is about 39,300 points, give or take. Could there be potentially a little bit more support between that? Yeah, potentially, but I'm just seeing more resistance, which is about 39,570 points, give or take. If you think it's going to just drop down like crazy to this upward trend support level dating back since April of 2024, I don't think it's going to be the case, but if you think it is, you're looking at the price point of 38,400 38,400 points, give or take. But I don't think that's going to be the case because it's quite a bit of a drop, and the Dow Jones for the longer term shows more upside. Obviously all of them in terms of long term, when I mean longer term, it's just like it's essentially for the next trading month or so, maybe 2 trading months, but for the long term, they're all going up, right? Here's the all chart for Dow Jones. Essentially, we created all-time highs recently. The Nasdaq, same thing, created all-times recently. And then the S&P created all-time highs recently too as well. So that's basically it for today's video. Consider subscribing, by the way, if you want to be notified when my next videos come out on X and YouTube. And if you found the video beneficial, consider dropping a like. It does help the channel, so thank you so much for that. I do appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Peace.